Greetings, everyone. This is Professor Theo Williams, and this is a video of me going through the syllabus. Normally in class, I would go over the syllabus the first night of class, and I would take that opportunity to answer any questions. Since this is an online class, I want to shoot this video to go through the syllabus, and hopefully it will answer any questions you do have. However, if you do have any more questions, feel free to email me, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. I mainly want to go over the assignments that you're going to be required to have throughout the semester. The first assignment is a very brief one that you can start posting tonight. Tonight is October 21st, and the class officially starts. And you can start posting this over the next few days, and it's simply an introduction. You're going to introduce yourself to the rest of the class. And I want you to focus primarily on three things. Number one, who are you? So just give us a few tad bits about who you would say you are. Number two, I want you to talk about any experience that you may have in terms of intercultural or cross-cultural relationships, communication, things of that nature. And that's just so we would get a feel for the level that each person is at in this course. So is this course the first thing you've done in terms of intercultural communication? Or would you say that you're an expert or that you have some good history as far as dealing with people from different cultures? So just talk briefly about where you would put yourself on this continuum. Are you a beginner, intermediate, expert? How would you rate yourself? And then finally, what are some of your expectations and desires for the class? When you signed up for this class, what were some of the things you were hoping to get out of it? All right, so it's going to be 2 paragraphs at the most. Just introduce yourselves. Normally, whenever we have some online discussions, I would require that all your classmates would respond to each other. For this, if anything, you can just say welcome, but just make sure you post your own 2 paragraphs, and there's no need to necessarily respond to anyone else's. And that's going to be worth 10 points, all right? The first major assignment is going to be a paper, and this paper is going to be due on November 2nd. So we're starting class October 21st. This is due November 2nd. It's going to be the Who Am I Cultural Identity paper. I think in order to become better at intercultural communication, in other words, how do we interact with other people from other cultures? I think it's crucial that we know who we are from a cultural standpoint. And we are all made up of multiple cultural identities. So for myself, I am a Christian, I'm Black, I'm a man, I'm a poet, I'm a professor, I'm a pastor, a son, a brother. All those are cultural identities that I would say make up who I am. And so what I want you to do in this paper is choose 3 or 4 of your most prominent cultural identities, the things that you say that make up who you are. And you're going to highlight those things. And I've taken the liberty in the syllabus to outline how I want the paper to look. It's going to primarily have 3 sections. But as always, I want you to start with an introduction. And your introduction can serve 2 purposes. It can preview what you're going to talk about in your paper, but it should also creatively draw the reader in before you get into the bulk of your writing. In other words, just don't jump right into the paper. Draw us in, pique our interest, introduce the paper. Section 1 is going to be you highlighting 3 or 4 of your identities. For example, if I was writing a paper, I may go with Christian, husband, male, and either an athlete, a poet, or a professor. And I would basically just tell you briefly why I chose those particular identities, why they're important to me, how they shaped me over time. That would be section 1. Section 2, I want you to talk about some of the cultural norms. And what a cultural norm is, it's the normal behaviors, the normal rituals, the normal activities that we have grown accustomed to participating in any particular culture. So what are the expectations? What are the expected behaviors, the expected communication styles, the expected rituals, the things that you would engage in if you are part of the Christian culture? What are some cultural norms when you're part of being a man or a woman? What are some cultural norms when it comes to being black, white, or Hispanic? A student, a father, a husband. So depending upon which identities you highlight, I want you to talk about what are some of the cultural norms of that particular culture. And then finally in that section, I want you to talk about some of the stereotypes that are associated with those particular cultures. So when we think about what it means to be a man, what it means to be a Christian or a husband or a student, what are some of the stereotypes that are associated with that culture? Now, once again, we're not saying these things may be true. They may be true, they may not be true. But we're talking about stereotypes. This is what people normally say about those particular cultures. So section 1, you're highlighting 3 or 4 cultures. Section 2, you're taking those same 3 or 4 cultures and now you're breaking down the norms of that culture and you're breaking down the stereotypes associated with that culture. Now, in the final section, I want you to take the culture and the cultural identities that you've highlighted, and I want you to compare and contrast them to one another. And I want you to talk about in what ways do those cultural identities complement one another, and in what ways do they conflict with one another. For example, if I was to focus on being a Christian, a man, being black, and let's say being an athlete, I would talk about in what things did I learn being an athlete that complement the cultural norms of being a Christian, but also in what ways they conflict. You know, athletics are very competitive, and sometimes that competitive drive can get the best of you. Whereas in Christianity, we're taught that we all should be unified, that we shouldn't be having that type of competitive nature. And so I want you to highlight the ways in which they go well with one another, how they complement with one another. And I also want you to highlight the ways in which they conflict with one another. And then finally, I want you to end with a conclusion, and that conclusion should be a recap of what you covered, or can once again creatively tie back into your introduction. So that's the introduction. The main body is going to be those 3 sections which are outlined in the syllabus, and then the conclusion. The parameters are 3 to 3.5 pages long. Normally this would be 4 to 4.5. We have a fairly large class, and I want to make sure that I can get through all the grading in a timely fashion. So I'm asking you to keep your papers to 3 to 3.5 pages long. I think 3.5 is a good range, because you can do a paragraph for an introduction, a paragraph for your conclusion, and then the body, those 3 sections, can be 3 full pages typed. And I think you will have everything covered. We're going to be typing all our assignments in APA style, so you can look online to figure that out. But basically, you're going to have a title page with a running header, and then your 3.5 typed full pages. And if you happen to cite something, you'll have a bibliography. But you're not required to cite anything in any of the assignments that you're using for this class. But if you want to cite some things, more power to you. But most of the assignments we have, you can do without having to do any of that research. And if you have any other questions, you can email me about some APA things, or you can just look online, Purdue OWL. All right, so that's going to be worth 150 points. And once again, it's due November the 2nd. Upload that right to Canvas. The second assignment we have is going to be what we're calling an intercultural interview. I want you to pick someone who is of a different culture than yourselves, and you're going to interview them. So maybe you are black and you want to interview someone who's Native American. Maybe you are in your 20s and you want to interview someone who's in their 80s, a different culture as far as their age-wise. Maybe you are a Christian and you want to interview someone who's agnostic or someone who practices Islam. And so we're going to learn in this class that culture isn't just race and ethnicity. It's any group that we're part of that shapes our attitudes, our values, our beliefs, and our behaviors. And so you're going to legitimately pick someone who's of a different culture of yourself, and then you are going to interview them. And online under files, I've already attached the interview guide that has some great questions, but you also have liberty to come up with your own questions. And so you want to interview them. I would say maybe for a half an hour or so in order to get enough material, and I would record the interviews. That way you don't have to be writing down things as you're interviewing them. And then you're going to take that interview, and I don't want a transcription. I don't want to see a paper where it says question, answer, question, answer. You're going to take those questions and you're going to take those answers and you're going to put it into a paper form. And you're simply going to write a paper about who you interviewed, what were some of the things you talked about, and what were some of their answers. And you're going to paraphrase and put most of their answers in your own words. However, if they do say something that's super profound, I would do a quote. I would quote them. But I do ask you that you would keep your quotes to smaller quotes. I don't want to see a 3.5 page paper where you have 50-word quotes. And so keep the quotes to shorter quotes. For the most part, I want you to be able to paraphrase and to put what they said in your own words. I think that's going to be important. So this is going to be, according to the syllabus, 4 pages. I would say, once again, keep it maybe 3.5 pages. That would be great. If you want to go 4, I'll accept that also. But we want to try to shoot for like 3.5 pages. Once again, I want to be able to get these things graded and back to you. And so that's going to be an intercultural interview. It's due on November 26th. All right, November 26th. But what I would highly suggest is, actually it's due, I'm going to verify that I have 2 different dates on the syllabus. I want to make sure I got the right date for you. It is going to be due November the 23rd. November 23rd. All right, November 23rd, that's a Friday. What I don't want you to do is wait too long in the semester to schedule this interview. Maybe you have someone in mind and you say to yourself, I'm going to ask them a week before the interview is due, and I'm going to contact them, and everything's going to work out well. And then lo and behold, you go to contact that person and they have a scheduling conflict and they can't do it. So even though the interview isn't due to November 23rd, I would say early on in this process, think about who you like to interview, contact them, get them scheduled. That way you can schedule the interview and have enough cushion just in case something happens and goes wrong and they have to reschedule, that you're not under the gun. So don't wait to the last minute to schedule the interview. Make sure you get it scheduled as possible. Even if you happen to do the interview now, record it and put it to the side for a later date. It's better to be safe than sorry. So once again, that's going to be worth 150 points also. And if you have any other questions about that, I can give you more about that. Like I said, I have that interview guide. One thing to keep note, at the bottom of the interview guide, there are some questions that I ask of you as the interviewer. And for example, what were some of the obstacles that you faced during the interview? Was there some language barriers? Were there any type of obstacles? Did you come in with some preconceived notions, or were you worried about the interview and why? If so, why? Things of that nature. You're going to see that paragraph at the end of that interview guide. So make sure you address that in your paper. So I would say have your introduction, do your interview and have the report of that interview. And then the second to last paragraph, you should just address any of those concerns that I asked you about. And then your last paragraph should be your conclusion. And as we get closer to that paper, if you have any questions about that, feel free to ask me. But that interview guide should be a great resource for you. And then the last major assignment is going to be what we're calling the Intercultural Strategy Guide. This is going to be due the final week of class. Specifically, I'm going to make sure, let's see, it's going to be due December 6th. So it's going to be due December 6th. And basically what you're going to do is, I want you to pick just one of the cultural identities that you talked about in that first paper. For me, I would probably pick being black. So I would pick that cultural identity. And then I'm going to pick 3 other identities that don't apply to me. So I'll imagine someone else. Maybe I may pick a woman since I'm a man. So I would go woman. Maybe I may pick Native American, and maybe I may pick Islam since I'm a Christian. And then I'm going to talk about the norms of my cultural identity. So what does it mean to be black? And I'm going to talk about the stereotypes associated with that identity. And I'm going to talk about the communication styles associated with that identity. And you're just going to fill those in this template that I have for you online. And then I'm going to look at those same three categories for the other cultural identities that I'm going to compare myself to. So what are the norms of what being a woman? What are the stereotypes of being a woman? What are the communication styles associated with being a woman? And then the same thing for Native Americans, same thing for Islam. And then I'm going to have these paragraphs at the end where I say, in what ways does me being black complement someone who's Native American? But also in what ways they contradict each other. So it's going to be like similar to the paper, but instead of dealing with your own cultural identity, you're going to be comparing one aspect of your cultural identity to other people's culture. And the whole idea of this is to figure out, one, you're going to realize that you have more in common with other people than what you thought you did. And number two, you're going to realize that when it comes to some cross-cultural interactions, there are going to be some things that conflict with one another. But how do we work through those conflicts? And so there's actually a template that I've uploaded, and you can just download this template, and all you're going to do is plug in these things, and then you're going to be all set. And so what's cool about the way I've arranged this class, I'm not asking you to write a paper when there's no guidance. There's a template. There's an outline for that. I'm not asking you to do this interview with no guidance. There's an interview guide for that. And for this last guide, there's a guide for that. And so all you have to do is pick the people you're interviewing and plug it in. Pick the coaches you're focusing on and plug them in. All right? There are some other ways to get some points. We have quizzes. We're going to have a quiz following each chapter. The way it's set up is there's no quiz this first week. I'm assuming you haven't done any reading yet. This first week, you're going to read through chapter 1. And if you don't have a book, just look through the PDFs of chapter 1, but more importantly, look through the PowerPoints of chapter 1 and listen to the video or MP3 on chapter 1, which I'll be uploading very shortly. And then you're going to take that information, and then the following week, the following Sunday, the quiz opens up. And so we're always going to be 1 week behind as far as the quiz. And so in week 1, there's no quiz, but the quiz in week 2 is over the previous week, chapter 1. And I open up the quiz on Sunday, and then it closes the following Sunday. So you have 1 week to do a quiz. Most quizzes are going to be timed, so you'll have 35 minutes. And so only sit down and take the quiz when you know you have at least 35 minutes to take it. Because once you hit start, you're going to see a timer up there, and you're going to see 35 minutes, and you have 35 minutes to take that quiz. Now, here's the good thing. You get to use your notes in your book in the PowerPoints for the quiz. So these are open book quizzes. Now, that may sound like, ooh, these are easy. They're not easy quizzes. They're designed to be somewhat challenging, but not too challenging. But what I don't want you to do is not study for the quiz and just say, well, I'll just take the quiz and pull out my notes and just look through everything. You just won't have time to do it that way. So study as if you can't use your notes. That way you don't rely upon your notes. Your notes are there to help you out, but don't have your notes be a crutch. All right, so there's going to be 5 quizzes worth 20 points each. They're going to be true and false, multiple choice, fill in the blank, and short answer. So it's going to be a total of 100 points over the course of the semester for those 5 quizzes. And then finally, we have online discussions. For each chapter, I'm going to have you answer one question, and you'll simply post online your answer to that question. And you would have to post by Wednesday of each week. So the class week starts on a Sunday. You'll see that question. You'll have until Wednesday to post your initial response. And there's some, in the syllabus, there's some posting guidelines that your response should be a minimum of 250 words. It's not a lot of words. So I don't want just a 2-line response. Now, I'm not going to count all these words. So if it's 240, that's cool too. I want to look at it visually. I'll be to see, is it a good enough response? So make sure you try to shoot for that 250-word response by Wednesday. And then by Sunday, you have to reply to at least 2 of your classmates. And you got to look at their response, and I want you to respond to their responses. And you got to reply to at least 2 of them. And those should be around 100 and 150 word responses. So they could be a lot shorter than your initial response. And the way the points are going to work, you're going to get 20 points per week for these discussions. You get 10 points for your response by Wednesday, and you'll get 5 points for the 2 responses that you do for your classmates. And you may lose a point here or there if the responses are shorter. And then what I'll do is I'll shoot a video at the end of each week responding to your responses. So it's pretty straightforward. The key is just to make sure you log on each day and do something. We're not asking you to write whole books and paragraphs, just 250 word responses for each week, and then 100 to 150 word responses for each for 2 of your classmates. So not every classmate, just pick 2 of your classmates to respond to. So you receive up to 20 points for that. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward. And so just make sure you're uploading your stuff on time, especially your papers. If something goes wrong and you know you can't get it on time, just shoot me an email. Let me know the reason why, and I'll work with you. What you don't want to do is just don't upload it. And then at the end of the semester, ask if you can upload it. And so if something's going on in your life, just let me know. I'll give you an extension if it's warranted, and then we can just go from there. So I apologize for the length of this video, but it's a longer syllabus, and I'm going to make sure I went through everything since we don't have the luxury of being in class where I can answer all your questions. So I have to cover things in a little bit more detail. But once again, if you do have any questions, feel free to email me and I'll answer those questions. And if it's a question that I think that the other class would benefit from, your other classmates, instead of emailing you personally, I'll put that in an announcement. That way each person can see that question and they can see the answer to that question. That way I don't get 10 emails about the same thing. And so I look forward to building with you all on this journey of intercultural communication. Hope you're excited. I'm excited. And so just make sure you post those introductions and then start looking over chapter 1. Take care and God bless. This has been Professor Theo. I'm out of here. Peace.